that and give you some information that you can use relative to that. I just want to take a few moments as we wait the arrival of our guest today to talk to my brother about his time over across the water. You were over there for over a month, and I know that there were some things that were going on that were really important to you in terms of things that can happen for you and for us in the future. So, talk about what you did while you were in Ghana for a month.
Well, mainly, it was a business trip. I was just trying to really go over there and scout out some stuff. See, so I'm some of your eyes and ears guys for guys who didn't make it over there or haven't made it over there yet. So I had to scout out the place to really see if I could live there. And so with Dr. Whitaker and friends up in Cape Coast, so we were scouting out different land masses, and I was going around the city and seeing exactly what's there. If sometimes we tend to think because that you may be missing some things if you go to Africa, or do they have this? A lot of people always say, do they have this? Do they have that? Can you get that? So I wanted to see for myself and take a good look at what was there, and can I sustain myself there? Can I be comfortable there? And the answer is yes. So I was there and I seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the pros definitely outweigh the cons. And so I'm just gonna move forward now and open the door for anybody else who want to thinking about taking a look and making a move and things of that nature, because I think we as Black people here in the United States that we have to have a contingency plan. We got to have a plan B, and especially while things are shaping up the way they are right now. So we don't know what direction it's go. So it's best not to get you caught with your pants down. So have your contingency plan, have your escape plan, and just in case, because they're working on our infringing on our rights, and they seriously thinking about taking their country back.
Okay. Well, it's interesting, Brother Antonio, that we both spent time away from the country. My experience was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and I was privileged to meet a number of people who have relocated to Mexico from America. And it's really interesting how your perspective changes when you go to another place. And so living here in America, we think that this is the best place that you could ever be. But then you get to other places and you realize that, the grass is not always greener on the other side. But on the other hand, there are advantages to being in other places. So for instance, we talk about chemtrails all the time. I'm in Mexico and I'm not seeing chemtrails. For that reason alone, like the stress, and we'll talk to Dr. Graham about this, the impact of stress on our lives and what happens when you remove those stressors, how your life changes. I interviewed a brother who was a sports analyst for a major network, who was a former NBA player. And he left America, went to Playa del Carmen, and found his peace. The things that were triggers for him, the things that stressed him out, they stopped being factors in his life. And he walked away. He walked away from, you on TV, you making money. And then you go somewhere else and you're not making the same kind of money, but you're not stuck on having to make money to be happy.
Yeah.
We often equate money with happiness, and as you know, they don't go hand in hand.
Right.
If you are seeing us on the screen, if you're watching us on YouTube, you will see that we've been joined by Dr. Erica Lynn Graham. She's a counseling psychologist and a recent 2025 PhD graduate from the University of Akron, and this is extremely impressive. She successfully defended her dissertation titled Redefining My Peace, speaking of peace, examining the relationship between positive racial attitudes, racial battle fatigue, and the moderating impact of culturally specific coping among people of African ancestry. During her academic journey, she conducted additional research and delivered several presentations with her research team at the Association of Black Psychologists Convention on the racial dynamics of supervision among African and Black doctoral students. She earned a master's in clinical mental health counseling in 2013 and a bachelor's in psychology in 2006 from the University of Akron. She's a dedicated social justice advocate with extensive experience in clinical practice and psychological evaluation services. Currently, she serves as the Associate Clinical Director at Minority Behavioral Health Group, spearheading the dual diagnosis program, Harmony and Balance. So much more that I could share with you, but I wanted to give her a proper introduction just so that you know that this sister is a truth. And she also happens to be my niece because her father is one of my best friends. Brother Ken Graham did a great thing when he and Tanya came together and created this beautiful human being. So welcome to 360 Info Network, Dr. Erica Graham. How are you today, doctor?
I am wonderful. Thank you for the great introduction, Uncle Vince. I
So
appreciate that.
welcome. And as usual, you know, a lot of times when I read biographies, they were actually crafted by the person who wrote it because they know themselves more than anyone else. So I'm privileged to be able to share your story with folks. And I will also say that we had the privilege of having you on 360 Info Network 6 years ago, almost to the
Oh
day.
wow, six
Um,
almost to the day. That's amazing. Oh
almost
my goodness,
almost to the day. And
divine timing.
it was one of those occasions where Brother Antonio was not able to join us. We were in the studio over on Carnegie. So much has changed since then. The station is all the way down in Independence on Rockside Road, and you weren't Dr. Graham then,
Not
but
at
you are
all.
now. So why don't we start with what has happened in 6 years since you have been involved in your journey as a counselor?
Well, again, thank you all for having me. Brother Antonio is amazing. I've seen you online a few times, so it's great to be in your presence as well. Over the last 6 years, yeah, October, August was when school finished, so I completed, it officially finished. So I defended in May of 2025, had a lot of corrections and those things happened, and then successfully finished and departed from the University of Akron in August. In the last 2 years, as the associate clinical director at Minority Behavioral Health Group, we have been working on a dual diagnosis program. So that dual diagnosis program really is a passion project of mine that has come to life. And that particular program looks at the intersection between trauma and us using maladaptive coping, like substance use. And so that is extremely rampant right now in our community. And a lot of times, unfortunately, mental health and substance abuse are dealt with separately. So you go to one agency for substance abuse, you go to another agency for mental health. And I've been jumping up and down screaming they need to be addressed at the same time by the same team, the
Okay.
same set of providers giving the same message. And so, Minority Behavioral Health Group, Pastor Dennis, Dr. Sierra Dennis Morgan, Dr. Sierra Dennis Morgan, and Dr. John Queener listened to me jumping around very, very passionately and said, "Get this girl a department." And so that department consists of us having group therapy, learning some DBT skills, and I infuse African centered modality in all of the work that I do. So it's
Good.
been an amazing ride so far.
Yeah, and just for some context, you came up through Golden Ciphers with our sister Pam Hubbard and the
Yes,
association between Sister Pam and Baba Paul
Paul
Hill.
Hill. Mhm.
So you have that pedigree and you have a connection to African cultural ideas just because you've been involved in that. Before we get too deep into the rabbit hole, I want to ask you how that affected your approach to practicing your craft.
Mhm.
It was a large aspect of foundation for me. It was the teachings that I had in going through rites of passage, and in collaboration with Holding Hands with Baba Paul Hill, um, Pam Hubbard, that I call Yayo, and Baba David Coleman,
Mhm.
provided a foundation for me that I understood my roots. I understood where I came from. I understood how powerful that energy was for me to grab the torch and continue to work. And so I held on to that on the days where things got really rough, where, modern culture or universal thresholds were in front of me that I had to overcome. I really had to hold on to that. And so being and going through rites of passage specifically, I understood that even on every journey that I was going to be on in my life, there were going to be barriers. And so I had to find things to hold on to and ground myself with. And all of the time, that was African centered thought. And I moved through school always bringing that up. Sometimes it was accepted, sometimes it was tolerated, sometimes it was disagreed with, but it was always my story and my truth.
Yeah. Well, when you talked about having two separate programs that really need to be one, because you go to this person for this and this person to that, that's really consistent with the allopathic approach to medicine. It's so compartmentalized, but the person is a whole person, and all these
Exactly.
systems are
Mhm.
connected. So when you operate in all those different silos and the communication between those silos is not consistent, then sometimes you have gaps in treatment because of that. And then sometimes it can just be confusing. It could be
Yes,
confusion just because this person doesn't know how this affects that. And so what happens is people continue to exist in dysfunction because the folks who are providing the treatment don't have their stuff together. So
precisely.
it sounds like you're looking at unifying the treatment approach as opposed to dividing it among several parties.
Taking a holistic approach to
Yeah.
everything, a holistic approach to everything. Because if you leave things out, those are going to be the very things that are going to cause the barrier later on. Yeah.
I
Mhm.
have to ask this question in light of what we've just discussed. Um, the benefit that you got from rites of passage and the virtual absence of it from our public education systems. From the seat that you sit in, do you see any kind of possibility that perhaps we could have more involvement in rites of passage in our educational institutions?
I think that rites of passage is going to be extremely important in the development of our young people. I wouldn't put it in the hands of our academic system, though. It has to be from us. It'll lose its authentic touch because that's what's happening already. So I don't trust that it needs to be in the public district at all. I think if we're going to get it authentically, it needs to come from the community. It needs to come from the grassroots organizations. It needs to come from the Babas and the Yayos and the foot soldiers who understand it and are willing to teach it. It's too much red tape if we try to put it in academia.
Yeah. I think what you just shared kind of resonates with Brother Antonio's perspective on it because, and we talk about this all the time. You can't expect someone who is oppressing you to give you the tools to liberate you.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
Yes.
Brother Antonio, do you want to speak about the importance of doing this type of work outside of the present system?
Yes, one thing we have to understand as people, this is, it's just really got me going right now because you don't own and you don't facilitate most of these things that we're involved in, as far as African American people right now. You're looking at the worldview or the understanding of somebody else that is foreign to you that totally uh, thinks different from you. Their journey is not our journey. So you got to approach that totally different. Even in my field, in law enforcement, and sometimes, you got other ethnic groups don't understand, why black folks don't like the police or why this or why this. Our journey is totally different. So with their mindset, like you said earlier, Vince, they tend to separate things. They don't understand that the mind, body, and soul is one entity, and all three of them have to be nourished and taken care of to get a full holistic human being together. And they're having a hard time understanding that, and so we find ourselves navigating ourselves through this maze that they set up, and it's not working for us. It's not working. Dr. Linda Jeffries always say, okay, if we don't have the money to set up the institutions and things like that we need, then whatever we're doing, he always used to say, Africanize it. Put your African flavor on it, man, and make it work for you to where it makes sense for you. You know what I mean? Because I know for every training program that I ever been in, when I going through their programs and getting certificates, I always had to massage it before I brought it back to the Black community, because it was always in the viewpoint and understanding of European behavior or how they seen things and things of that nature. So definitely, I think that, who better to tell your story, who better to understand your journey than than us. So we have to do more of that. So in fields like that, in the mental health, even in law enforcement, and the legal system and all of that, it's something that Dr. Amos Wilson said. To be a good one, you have to be grounded in your culture and understanding who you are in order for you to be a good doctor, because you got to understand your physiology is different, and you got to manipulate things to where it fits your people. You have to understand the background as far as law enforcement. Going to the lawyers, got to understand that he come from a different background, so I need to do this. So it's imperative and important that we have to understand that and not fall victim to a system that is not working, is not made for us, and it's not working for us.
Brother Antonio, I'm looking at the sister that is on this broadcast with us and thinking about her relationship to psychology. And, some of our foremost scholars, the Dr. Naeem Akbar, the Asa Hilliards, the Dr. Kawanza Kunjufus,
Yes.
Francis Cress Welsing, all psychologists.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking about the first natural law of the universe, and that is the universe is mental.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems as though there's an extreme importance to this subject matter that we're talking about. And I just wanted to illustrate that point for the folks who are watching us on YouTube, and also those who are listening on AM 1490 WERE. We're going to take a break momentarily. We got about 7 minutes before we get to the break. But Dr. Graham, could you talk to us about the Minority Behavioral Health Group? Tell us about who they are, what they're doing.
So Minority Behavioral Health Group is located in Akron, Ohio. And Pastor Dennis, pastoring a church, seen that mental health among his congregation was an issue that needed to be taken care of outside of himself. And so he gathered multiple Black psychologists, and those are the founders of the organization. And some of their training and their ways and their mindsets, I like to call them Black radical psychologists, was instilled in some of us. So we use a model of therapy from Nana Dr. Linda James Myers, Optimal Conceptual Theory, which is a Black woman from the Ohio State University. And her model looks at two mindsets, suboptimal and optimal. So suboptimal is more connected to universal law or European thought, and optimal is more connected to those African centered principles. And so therapy is to move you from your suboptimal, which is probably causing distress in your life, to optimal. And so Brother Hamtonio talked about those things, and I was heated in my seat. One of the one of the principles is like a holistic worldview. But before I can move a client to a more holistic worldview, I have to understand where they're coming from and their lived experience. Another one of our principles is self-knowledge. So I'm bringing in literature from Baba Wade Nobles into sessions. We're reading Baba Akbar's Know Thyself in sessions. I'm giving homework therapeutically to know yourself a little bit more based in deep African
Afrocentric.
thought.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So yeah, so suboptimal thinking is like you are worthy because of the things that you collect, the degrees you collect, the money you make. You're always in competition with someone.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Optimal is collectivism. We do better together. It's not about what I have, but we do respect those who have knowledge and wisdom, right? So we
mm-hmm,
we seek that out all of the time. And one of my favorite belief system analysis principles is diunal logic. And so something is can be positive and negative at the same time. You can go through an experience and pull the lesson out of it. Look for the lesson comes from rites of passage,
mm-hmm,
right? So always acknowledging how something traumatic, something extensive could have happened, but what are you learning from it? How are you growing from it? And things are not dichotomous, yes, no, up, down, left, right. There could be some type of variation for why things happen. And we got to seek from curiosity to find those things. And so I've been in and out of that agency for the last 10 years while school is going on. And at this point, I don't want to put my energy anywhere else but there and for my own business. So
Yeah, because
those are two places I'm rooted.
I know at one point you were talking about having your own practice,
Yeah.
but it seems
Mhm.
as though you found a place where you can fit in comfortably and perhaps not necessarily carry the heavy load of being responsible for the entire entity. I
Both
really
things are true. I do have a private practice.
okay.
Well, that's
Um,
good. That's good.
I like what you said about suboptimal and
Yeah.
optimal. And my
Mhm.
thought about the suboptimal is the European brainwash that we've been immersed in.
Mm-hmm,
Yes.
And
mm-hmm,
so in essence, what you're doing is you're retraining the brain to an African-centered mindset, which
Yes.
embraces the idea of collective work and responsibility and cooperative economics and purpose,
Yes.
mm-hmm,
creativity,
Yes.
unity.
Taking the Nguzu Saba and bringing it to life
mm-hmm,
Exactly.
mm-hmm,
in
Exactly.
sessions
mm-hmm.
all of
Yeah.
the
But
time.
you
Yeah.
see, the thing that gets me, and that's why I'm at right at this point. What can we do to make our people understand that I call it that type of brainwashing? You know what I mean? How can we? You have to first come to, it's almost like in the substance abuse arena, and I like how they say that if you got to recognize the problem first before healing can take place. And it seems like we're not really recognizing that we're in a European mindset cesspool of of institutions that is not favorable to the African American experience. So if you just going around engulfed in that and trying to be accepted by this system that is not really, all you doing is pumping up the system. You're giving them more energy to keep you in the position that you are. So we should be looking for other ways, other means, to do something, and we're not. A bulk of us is not, because we think this is it. Just like Vincent, you said earlier that we think America is the best thing and the best place to be at. So you're almost looking at, okay, this system is the best way to do something. It's the only way to do something. It's the only way to teach our kids. It's the only way to set up a school. It's the only way to do a community, and it's not working for us, But again,
Well, I think the real issue is that as a group of people in this country, we've become comfortable in our dysfunction,
for sure, yes.
and so we resort to things to cope with our dysfunction. And it could be watching the Cavaliers play basketball. It could be going to the bar every night and having 3 or 4 drinks. It could be any of a number of things. But the fact of the matter is, and then this is a reality that I've come to really take hold of. We can't save everybody. And
Yeah.
and everybody ain't ready to be rescued.
Wow.
You could come to a person and say, you have
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. And did you know that a plant-based diet for many people, I'm not going to say it's a cure for everybody, okay? So disclaimer, so that they don't, censor us or whatever, but if you suggested to them that there's a possibility that if you embrace a plant-based diet, your diabetes will disappear. And people are so comfortable taking in the things that are causing them the problem that they don't want to give that up. So they will live with diabetes as opposed to eating, a nice healthy diet that includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, and seeds, and excludes the things that are causing this person to have diabetes and face the loss of a limb, face the loss of their eyesight, requires that they take multiple medications, all those things. You could, if you made that choice, but you're so comfortable in, doc, give me a pill so I can make it to the next day. That's what we do. Speaking of making it to the next day, we're going to make it to the next segment of the show after we step away for just a few moments. If you're just joining us, you are listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. We are simulcasting to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn at this point. So if you are available to get on any of those platforms, you can join us there as well. Our guest is Dr. Erica L. Graham. She is the Associate Clinical Director, I think I got that right, of the Minority Behavioral Health Group located in Akron, Ohio. We'll make sure that we include a link to that website in the description for this video. And we will be right back momentarily with more 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Welcome back to 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Brother Antonio and our guest, Dr. Erica L. Graham. I think L stands for Lynn, I think. And we are very privileged to have her aboard with us today. We're talking about mental health and the importance of being in touch with it. We often neglect our mental health because we're focused on our physical and spiritual health. Dr. Graham, you indicated that there's a pastor involved in this. And I guess perhaps for whatever reason, he saw the importance of making the connection between spiritual health and mental health. Can you elaborate a little bit or perhaps on what his perspective is relative to that?
So his perspective is connected to another one of optimal theory's principles, and that is spiritual development, and whatever that has to be. Everyone in the agency is not Christian. Everybody in the agency doesn't follow one aspect, but he believes that spiritual development is essential for that, like, holistic aspect of healing. And so a lot of times in sessions, we are asking, like, what spiritual background do you align with, and how can you use it to help, to cope, and to deal? And so he has, again, his congregation was struggling with some mental health, but not necessarily just his congregation. He's responsible for a lot of the urban aspect of Akron. And so he's seen in that larger Akron community that mental health was a area that needed some more attention. And these psychologists said, well, we have to address it holistically. And so bring in mental health for the African mind.
I have
So
to ask,
yeah,
in light of what you just shared, perhaps there could be some trauma involved in us as a people not being able to connect with our spiritual roots and having had someone else's religion or someone else's moral ideas forced upon us. For instance,
Mhm.
and this is controversial, okay? I'm just gonna put it out there. And I know that there are going to be arguments for and against, but a man having multiple wives is an aspect of African culture.
it is.
And there are parts of African culture where a woman could have more than one husband. It can go both ways. But we lived the way we lived for thousands of years. And then we were brought over here, and then we were told, well, you can't do that no more because that's not what we do. We accepted that suboptimal paradigm.
We
And I'm
did.
just wondering what we as a people are going through because we've been separated from our foundation and our original way of life. What are your thoughts about that?
We're very distorted because of it. Our worldview is so distorted because of a hegemonic worldview. Let's make it universal. That is extremely detaching for us for our culture. For me specifically, it's been amazing studying and learning Ifa and Yoruba
Mhm.
culture because I need to be able to bring that to the forefront, and I need to be able to talk about what that means and connect back spiritually. And so if we don't, we're losing a part of us. We have been conditioned and indoctrinated to accept what is given to us and not to explore, be curious, and ask questions for self and look outside of a one kind of dimensional spiritual way of learning and growing and looking at that higher power. So we really do ourselves a disservice when we only view from that one dimensional part.
For sure.
A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Dr. Katrina Hazard Donald, and she talked about hoodoo in America.
Mhm.
And one thing that she expressed was the fact that we were practicing traditional African spiritual things in conjunction with the Christian things that we were getting, and I just wonder from your perspective how practical it is to be in both worlds. When you talk about, and you said Ifa and Yoruba and whatnot, and so within that ideology, you have different aspects of God, Obatala, different,
Sure.
Shun.
all these different. I
I know, yeah.
but we relate to them as all part of that same
Oneness.
supreme oneness that we refer to as God.
Mhm.
And
For
I
sure.
I just think sometimes that if we weren't so affected by the control that others have exerted over us of our self-perception.
Mhm.
Brother Antonio brought Baina Bello to us, and she's talked about how the people of Haiti were able to defeat the British, the Portuguese, and the French, because they were connected to their African spiritual practices.
For
And
sure.
I'm just thinking in this moment, if we had that kind of unity in this country, and I'm not saying, give up Jesus. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that if we had that awareness and that connection to our spiritual power because of our connection to the all, we would be so much more effective in how we navigate the society. Earlier today, I watched an interview between Roland Martin and the sister who was leading the boycott of Target. And earlier this week, Reverend Jamal Bryant came out and essentially said, well, we can discontinue the boycott. But this sister, and I don't even want to repeat her name because it was one of the ugliest interviews I've ever seen. I mean,
Mm. Mm.
Roland Martin can be abrasive sometimes. I mean, that's just true. Sometimes he can be a little bit abrasive because he's opinionated and he's bound to his conviction about certain things. But he's interviewing his sister and he's trying to ask a question and she's just talking over him like he wasn't even there. And at one point he said, "This is my show." this is my show. But I'm just thinking about how divided we can be as people sometimes, and how we don't really acknowledge the group as a whole and the importance of us being cohesive and perhaps casting aside our differences. This sister also criticized Nina Turner and a few other folks. You know, I guess basically her idea was she wants to put herself out there as the leader of this movement, and she was standing on her business. But I don't know why that resonated with me so much this morning. But I just want to invoke the whole idea that when we stop arguing with each other and we accept each other in our individual greatness, in our collective greatness, we can have an impact on the things that are affecting us in this society. And it just seems as though we've been the most disaffected group by all the things that are taking place in this country: the pollution, the environmental hazards, the problem with the diet, the way the lead affects us, all the things that cause us to have these collective traumas. And then there's the epigenetic piece. And just based on that, it seems like every last one of us needs to have some counseling.
Yeah, you can be on somebody's couch for sure.
Yeah, for a lot of different reasons. But I think there's one common answer to all of that, and it's exposure. I may not change your mind overnight about your diet. I may not change your mind overnight about your religious affiliation. I may not change your mind overnight about how you want to wear your hair. But if I give you some exposure to how this is working for me and I let you try it out, I might be able to get you to add it to your routine, your regimen, or your day. And so I may not, it may not happen overnight. It may happen a little bit at a time. But if I spark some curiosity, then I'm hoping to catch that part of your brain that wants to learn more. And your learning more doesn't come from social media. It comes from book. It comes from foundation. It comes from word of mouth. And if we understand our tradition from word of mouth, we do a lot better when we sit at the feet of some elders and get that information from them and then let it be passed down and provide the literature. I read about deities and Orisha during my comprehensive exams, and that is what kept me balanced. I can understand from those traits that I aligned more with and wanted to be more like while I was moving through a PWI doctoral program. So that is what helped me. But then that exposure made me want to learn more and grow more. So there's always this aspect of a little bit of exposure can go a long way in helping, because we are so indoctrinated, and it is so entrenched. And so, I'm bringing the plant-based dish to
Philosophy
the
there, huh?
cookout.
Yeah. But here's one thing that I want to just get off before I have to leave. To me, it just seems like, and we know what's happening when we talked about the brainwashing. We don't really appreciate and respect what our ancient ancestors have laid down, because if we did, we'll be seeking that. So evidently we are not. So because we are all victim to what we've been told, like you said, hoodoo, voodoo, and all of that stuff. They that's so far from us and our psychic understanding and what that's about. Let me say, all those other major cultures, your Asian, your African, your Indian culture, all of those cultures have a deep sensitivity and connection to what? Nature. They incorporate it into their spirituality, their way of life, their understanding. You see what I'm saying? This this system has taken you so far away from that, and then just put a bad label on any of that type of understanding, we're not even looking that way. If we really respected ourselves and respected our culture and our lineage on who we are and what we come from, you'll be working to try to regain some of that information. If you really understood and knew that we did the pyramids, had the first calendar, we charted the first stars, and we did the first operations and brain surgeries and this, that, and other. If you really knew that stuff, you'd be like, well, doggone, let me see what my people did. So I'm leading up to saying this, that all these issues that we are going through right now, when you got the origin of the people of the planet who started all of this, they solved all these problems. It's there for us to taking, to understand all the little stuff, all the little daily trials and tribulations, and how to get along with each other, how to deal with relationships, how to deal with marriage, how to deal with children, how to deal with community, how to even war up on something, to get together and you got to fight battles. All those problems were solved. Those things is a part of rituals, customs, and ways of life. But since we don't respect it to the point that we want to engulf ourselves into that particular culture, because it's been so much negativity and separation, we're not even looking that way. But we haven't come to the understanding that that's the foundation of everything, and everybody stole this philosophy from us. So we don't respect it that much. We ain't into it that much because his ice is colder than ours, and so we're gonna, we just hell bent on want to be accepted by this system. So until that light bulb come on and say, hey man, there's something better than this, that fits my soul, that fits my spirituality, and fits my condition. Until we come to that, and like Vince, what you said earlier, Vince, I've come to that conclusion. It ain't for everybody, and I can't save everybody. You know what I mean? So I say there's only 43 million people per se in this country. There's other millions of black folks somewhere else who may want to be open to some understanding on some stuff. So I'm gonna stop beating my head against the wall on folks who don't. You got to come to it on your own. I guess, I don't know.
Well, the bottom line, Brother Lynn, is that people like yourself, Dr. Graham, we're the messengers. We can bring the information to you, but it's up to you to do what you will do with it. But I would like to invoke something that you just mentioned, and that is our relationship to nature. And I think the real issue is our connection to the Creator is rooted in our connection to nature.
Absolutely.
And the power is in nature. I mean, when you look at the human body and its ability to heal itself with the proper stimulus, where everything that's necessary for healing the body naturally occurs in the earth. And it doesn't have to be synthetic. It can be exactly what it is. And when you use it in its exact form and not the synthetic form, that's when you get the benefit from it. I saw a video last week. This brother found some leaves to a specific plant. And he had a son who was requiring knee surgery. Doctors told him he had to have knee surgery. The brother was able to grow the plants in his yard. He wrapped the plant around his knee, came back to the doctor a month later. He said, you don't need the surgery. Now, if we as a people are armed with this knowledge, then we don't go to the doctor and spend thousands and thousands of dollars for something that may or may not work. But when we have that self-knowledge, that awareness that has been handed down for centuries from those who came before us, our ancestors, we have everything that we need to be successful in life. But the critical part of it, and we keep coming back to this after coming out of African Heritage Month or Black History Month, whatever you want to call it, we have to remember who we are. We have to remember that we were the ones who did the first surgeries. We were the ones who created the math. We were the ones, as you said, Brother Antonio, charted the stars and all of that. We had that knowledge, and we have an obligation to be connected to that. Dr. Graham, you wrote a dissertation, and you used some nice big words in it. Couple of them, couple of phrases. You said culturally specific coping, and you talked about racial battle fatigue.
That good. I'm glad you brought that up. That's a question I wanted to.
Right.
Good.
Right. So I want you to define those things and talk about why they are relevant to our conversation today.
Yes.
So racial battle fatigue first. So racial battle fatigue is this reoccurring stressor that we experience and almost an anticipation of some type of racial, like microaggression on a small scale, small but not small scale, that can reoccur. A microaggression is something where you're sitting and somebody make a statement and you're like, what? Did they just say that? And it's something racial that you're like, no. But then you take a second and go, am I gonna correct that? Or do I have the mental capacity to do that right now? Because I may not. I may have to keep going with what I'm doing. So it's a maybe a stereotype that gets talked about that they feel someone is feeling like you're mapping on to at that moment. And it could be something as large as redlining or institutional racism or police brutality or I like to call them at this point public lynchings, these situations where things escalate and somebody actually is murdered in front of us and they stream it on social media. So those reoccurring things build up as stress pockets, and they can either be manifest until some type of behavioral concern, like substance abuse, like over aggression and destroying things. It can look like psychological racial battle fatigue, the anxiety, the internal kind of like body keeps the score, like this trauma that I'm holding on to, or I have this nervousness about being around people, or I'm getting fired up on the inside, or I'm waiting, or I'm on the fence. It could be physical, diabetes. It could lead to other health impairments, and then we already have health disparities as it is. And so racial battle fatigue is kind of like this reoccurring, I have to be on defense and I've experienced all of these like racial things and they build up. Racial battle fatigue is also connected to the point that it may not have happened to me, but I know what it is when I see it somewhere else. And I'm getting frustrated that I see someone else going through it, right? So that is kind of sitting at the table at a PWI and hearing some of the conversations and the worldviews and the stereotypes that other folks had was a big form of racial battle fatigue for myself and some of the other Black students that we sat around with, because we always had to figure out whether we were going to self-preserve or whether we were going to teach. And a lot of times we would look at each other and go, okay, who got capacity? Who wants to teach in this moment? Who wants to lay it all out on the table so we can all agree and go, hey, that mindset needs to change. So racial battle fatigue, I think that we all go through it. We don't know it. And a lot of times if you're working in corporate America, it happens every single day.
And the physical effect of that, how, because I'm looking at that kind of stress and you dealing with things, that could be the onset of a lot of health issues, man.
Stroke.
Yeah, yes.
High blood pressure. John Henryism, where I have to work myself to death. Like I literally have to work myself to death. I have to be that concept. I have to be twice as good, twice as fast, twice as efficient, and I work myself to death.
Yeah, I'm thinking about something that happened probably within the last week or so. The director of Black Panther and Sinners went to the bank to withdraw $12,000 and ends up handcuffed and in a police car. You go to the bank to get your own money that you've earned, and the whole world knows you got this money, but somebody ignorant in the bank wants to treat you like a criminal, not believing that it would even be possible. That's racial battle fatigue right there.
It is on the high end. He put his codes in and everything. to his
Yeah.
account, his PIN number, and everything.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't know about that. What?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. And
It,
that teller silently left from standing in front of him and called an alert. And there were
Really?
guns pointed at that man behind that incident.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You come to the bank to get your own money. So that's a lesson to you. If you got money, don't put it in the bank. Because when you put your money in the bank, it ain't your money anymore. They've
It's not.
brainwashed into thinking that that's the safest place for your money, and it's the worst place for your money. You know.
Hey, let me get this one question off real quick.
Yeah.
Just a little short one, real quick. How does that affect? I'm wondering the impact, how it affects someone. All those things what you just said, working yourself to death, you're trying to strive, you're trying to be the good person that they tell you need to be for success, and then you come around and see them promote somebody over you. You know you was next in line and all that. How does that affect a person? I mean, as far as your self-esteem, your hopelessness, or you just, do it fools you right into that just complacentness now, where it don't matter. There's a lot of that got up and went, or what,
Yeah, your motivation can change. Your
Yeah.
motivation can change. Your fight can change. Your self-worth can change. If your self-worth and your self-esteem is connected in somebody else telling you you got the job. And so that's the biggest part where that another aspect of my dissertation was that culturally specific coping. So we have to intentionally put those things back because they're being challenged every day. I have to understand that my self-worth is not connected to whether or not somebody else sees the job that I do, or my self-worth is not connected to that promotion. My
Okay.
self-worth is not connected to somebody yelling out a stereotype, right? My self-worth is not connected to the fact that I've chosen to lock my hair. And so if I have to come into your environment and all you want is straight hair, guess what? I'm probably not welcome, so I'm gonna go. That doesn't mean that I'm gonna sit here and comb out all 411 of my locks to fit in, because I'm not. Right? So it is definitely like, so after I hear all of those things, they are slights, they are hits at my character. So I have to turn around and get those things built back up, or else it's gonna have long-term effects.
Okay.
I have to.
Quickly, so that folks
Yeah.
get the benefit of being able to connect with you, tell folks how they can reach out to Minority Behavioral Health Group.
So minoritybehavioralhealthgroup.org. You can reach us there. My private practice is best to reach me by email, alternativethoughtsllc@gmail.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me
Say it one more time,
specifically.
sister. One more time, sister.
Alternative Thoughts LLC@gmail would be the best way to get a hold of me, or Alternative Thoughts on Facebook.
Okay. Wonderful. There can never be too many folks who do what you do. Okay.
Thank you.
So it ain't
We love
about
it here.
competition, it's about access. So those of
Yeah.
you who have been moved to consider taking up some type of therapy, and in the next hour, we're going to talk about some of the approaches that you take to treating folks and some of the issues that they're dealing with as we continue this conversation. Just another reminder to those who are listening to us on AM 1490, you can continue to listen to this broadcast, and you can actually view this broadcast by going to the 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can also go to 2 different YouTube channels. You can go to The Journey with Hamtonio, go there, like, comment, and subscribe. You can also go to my YouTube channel and do the same thing. It really helps us out a lot when you comment and share this information, because people need to know. Lastly, I just want to give a great shout out to our engineer, the third wheel, the one who makes it possible for us to do this, our brother Tone Harley at the radio station WERE AM 1490. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, y'all.
Peace. Peace.
All right. So I guess we're going to say goodbye to our partner.
Yes.
He's got to get out and get to something, but I'm happy and privileged to continue a conversation with Dr.
And I'm
Graham.
gonna keep this rolling,
Yes.
Vince. So you just take me off the screen, and I'll just keep it rolling because I got it going to my YouTube.
Okay, got you. All right, so we are continuing our broadcast with Dr. Erica Lynn Graham, PhD, Associate Clinical Director of the Minority Behavioral Health Group down there in Akron. Do you do like virtual sessions too?
I do. I
Okay.
do virtual sessions. So it's kind of where the convenience of the client needs are. I am in a collective in Fairline called the Regenerative Collective. And so for alternative thoughts, I do see clients in person in Fairline as well.
Okay. I wanted to get to another term that you used in the dissertation. It is culturally specific coping. Talk to us
Yes.
about what that is.
So culturally specific coping has a couple of different aspects, and one of my favorites, because what I was hoping would happen happened in the dissertation. And culturally specific coping is us learning ourselves, literally from an African centered perspective, and understanding ourselves. But collective coping specifically is coping that we do together. So being amongst other like minded people. So that might be basketball. That might be some type of reading group. That might be something where we all are just hanging out. But there is a healing aspect to you collectively with being with other Black people of a similar mindset where you're not competing against, you're not arguing with. Yes, you might have debates about things, but you are understood with this group and you have like interests or like mindset with this group so that you can feel affirmed.
That's interesting because when I read it, I thought culturally specific coping might be negative behaviors, but it seems like it's the exact opposite of that. So you get a group together and you participate in an activity that contributes to your pushing back against the things that are creating the problems and the dysfunction.
Absolutely. So it may also be processing something that happens. So sitting in an environment with someone that you know is going to be affirming and affirming of our culture, right? And having an explanation there about what happened. And someone being able to normalize your frustration, normalizing your anger, and figuring out together, well, what are we going to do? Do you want to do something about it? Is it good to just let it out and vent and talk about it? Ritual coping is involved in that. So, what are you doing for yourself on a daily basis that connects back to our African Centered thought? All of those things are great ways of coping for us, and it's also things that people endorse and said that they were doing. They are connecting spiritually. People do study traditional African thought. People do look at unks. People do look at Ndinkra symbols and look at the power behind those. All of those things are relevant in us connecting to self. And as we again build up or affirm self, that counteracts the things that are happening within our environments on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm. You know, you just mentioned the Adinkra and you also mentioned the Ankh, and I'm also aware of the connection between Kemet and the West Coast, because the Adinkra we associate with Ghana and we associate with the West Coast of Africa. I'm just wondering, in light of the fact that we've had such a significant impact as a result of the suboptimal that you spoke about, what kinds of things can you do as someone who is involved in mental health care to undo the brainwash that has occurred?
One of my favorites, all-time favorites, is pouring libation, honoring those who have made their transition, right? And those who have made their transition, it could have happened because of age and living a very fulfilling life. It could have happened tragically at 15, right? But grief and loss is something that a lot of us deal with, and we can deal with it in an adaptive, healthy way, or it could get real unhealthy and maladaptive, right? And so libation is a ritual, right? So again, going back to ritual centered coping, if we are doing that ritual of speaking someone's name who's made their transition, keeping their legacy alive, keeping their funny jokes and funny stories alive, in a way we can help soothe grief by acknowledging that we don't have to just because we've someone's made their transition and they're not earthside anymore, that they can't still be alive in spirit with us, that we can't grab plants and pour water into plants and have that be a representation of those folks still being here with us, or nurturing their legacy, so to speak. So that's one way. There are many. Some people are aware of that. Some people are not. Some people like to connect it to one set of spiritual or religious, but it's culture and it's our culture. And
Mhm.
so again, like killing that kind of like stereotype that that's some spooky thing. That was all a part of our disconnect with our culture. Culturally, if you can connect with the rituals and the aspects that we as African people have within our heritage, it might start lightening up that distress you got.
Well, it's interesting because some of these things we do without really knowing that that's what we're doing. I'm just thinking about
Precisely.
how the homies will pour out some liquor on the ground, when they're thinking about their homie that just got shot last week.
Exactly. We
That-
do it and we don't even know. That's why the aspect of hoodoo and voodoo and all of that kind of stuff is so important to talk about. It's because your mom got some superstitions that are probably rooted in hoodoo, voodoo, Ifa, any of that. You
yeah,
walking around here being African and don't even realize it. And some of the things that have been passed down in your tradition,
right.
that this household does those things.
Mhm.
If you ask your mom about this household does these things, I'm sure that those can be connected back to some type of ritual or culture. I'm,
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet on
it's
it.
like your grandmama throwing salt over her left shoulder.
Exactly.
I,
Where
I'm
does that
thinking
come
of
from?
I'm thinking of the movie. I don't know if you saw it because it's probably before your time, but there was a movie that Danny Glover was in called To Sleep with Anger.
I'm not familiar.
You
You
should you,
dated me.
you should watch that movie, To Sleep with Anger. And
Okay.
there are definitely things that relate to African spiritual and cultural practices. There's a scene in the movie where Danny Glover plays this guy who's like this negative spirit that comes into this family's house, and as he's in this house, things just go crazy, just all chaos and
Yeah.
confusion because he's there. And there's one scene where somebody has a broom and they brush the broom across his shoe. And that's supposed to be a very bad thing, you know.
Yes. It is a
But
bad.
again, and it was the filmmaker who chose to put that scene in the movie just to make that reference, But again, we will be the first to say, I ain't African, and then do something
Right.
that Africans do. But
So
I think,
African.
yeah, well, I think partly because it's a part of our epigenetic memory
It
in the
is.
same way that some of the dysfunction on the European side of things has been passed down.
For
So, for
sure.
instance, if you look at the person who is the president of this country and you look at certain behavioral things, but he's basically repeating things that his ancestors did. And this dysfunction is something that's passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so it continues to live. And that's one of the reasons that it's so important for us to know who we are. And it's also important for us to address the issue. It's like what Lynn was saying in the other hour that we were on.
For
He was
sure.
talking about, you have to recognize that you have a problem in order to deal with it. We
For
can't be
sure.
in denial about our dysfunction. We're in denial, so we just go to dialysis center and have dialysis done, and we ignore the fact that our kidneys aren't functioning properly because we've lived in a state of fear. I'll ask you in this
Absolutely.
moment, can you make any association between emotional issues and the dysfunction of the way our internal organs work? I mentioned kidneys and fear. You know, you have stomach that is affected by worry. You have lungs that are affected by grief. Can you talk about the connection between your organs and your emotions?
So there's an aspect of our stress called physiological stress. The aspect of stress that we hold in our bodies, right? So when we do guided meditation, and our chief at our agency is a yogi, right? So that's amazing because we get to use her talents all the time. And we'll sit in, and she'll do a guided meditation and she'll say, release your jaw. And you do it and you go, man, I was holding my jaw in that spot all day. Or when I do guided meditations, I'll start with your toes and I say, wiggle your toes. Your toes or your feet have been positioned in one, you're kind of like stagnant, just there. So imagine that tenseness, tightness, fatigue throughout your whole body. Especially, let's go specifically with your stomach or your gut. We hold stress there, right? When I do body scans, I say your stress starts from the top of your head and it goes down from your feet and it meets in your stomach, it meets in your core. So you are literally holding worry, stress, anger, frustration. You're holding all of that. And so your organs are affected, right? Your body is affected by that tenseness, tightness, fatigue, stress that you consider consistently acquire and you're not releasing it. And so if you're releasing it daily, then it doesn't have the ability to accumulate into some of these health concerns that you're talking about. But if you ball your stress up and you let it accumulate without any outlets or release, then it's going to turn into some type of dysfunction, disorder, dis-ease, ease. So no ease in your day, no ease in your week, no ease in just being able to lighten up emotionally. And then these things kind of like accumulate and turn into bigger problems.
Mhm.
We're holding stress in our bodies.
Right. Another thing that I have been really cognizant of lately is the power of our speech, the
Mhm.
power of our words, and the difference between having a positive attitude and a negative attitude. For instance, if someone is saying, I am sick, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, continuing to have these thoughts, then their body hears that and it responds by giving them what they are projecting into themselves. If they say, things always go wrong, you just created reality that everything is going to go wrong because
Yeah.
that's your mindset. Can you talk to us about the power of our thoughts and perhaps suggest some ways that we can reverse our thinking from a negative mindset to a positive mindset?
Yeah, so if you believe in energy, you're wielding that energy. If you believe in things manifesting, you're manifesting what's coming out of your mouth, right? If you believe in like speaking it with your tongue, you speaking it with your tongue. So it doesn't matter what kind of like train of thought or mindset you come from, exactly what you're saying. Whatever you're speaking, that's what you're focused on, that's what your energy goes into, and eventually it might manifest, it's gonna manifest in your life. And so if you're speaking positivity into situations, if you're speaking positive energy, affirmations are huge. What you're saying to yourself, what you're saying to your environment, how you're starting your day, positive imagery is huge. What do you see? What are you intentionally putting in your, do you have live plants in your home? Things that are living, that are breathing, that are providing oxygen to you on a daily basis. Do you have those things in your home? Can you see and watch something grow? It's springtime, spring is coming. Can you see flowers kind of like arise? You can do that with yourself. You can do, are you pouring into yourself the way that you would pour into those plants that you have or that flower garden that you have? Are you pouring into yourself? Are you giving yourself self-care? Is not selfish. If you're taking care of you, then you have the capacity to take care of others or to manifest whatever else there is that you need to do. So the first aspect of that is making sure that you have something in your routine every day that is positive. How do you start your morning? Your first 15 minutes of the morning. Some of us get up, I gotta go to the workhouse. I gotta go do that. But if that first 15 minutes is I got this, I statements. I am brave, I'm powerful, I am strong beyond my own means. Those things can settle in your mind. Are you doing some type of deep breathing? Are you sending some oxygen to your brain? The oxygen going to your brain unfiltered with nothing else in it, no nicotine, no marijuana, nothing. And it just oxygen will help you throughout your whole day. And you can set a mindset and set a tone for yourself to be able to deal or tolerate with the things of the world. Because all of those things that are happening throughout your day, those things are happening. You may not have control over those things, but you have control over what you pour into you.
Yes. We just got a question or a
Mhm.
comment from Brother Lonnie Sloan. He's asking to define positive.
Adding to powerful energy, um, uplifting, recharging. And it also doesn't mean that we're always in a state of happiness. It doesn't mean that. But just because something happens doesn't mean it happened to you because you were doing something wrong, right? Sometimes things happen in life because somebody else had an agenda, right? And so taking some of the ownership out of that and making yourself more aware of what's going on and trying to shelter your peace. I love, even more than positivity, I love peace, right? I love that concept of protecting your peace, honoring your peace, and trying to increase that all day with the things that you love, the things that you like, with the things that you listen to, the music, your media, the intake, the movies. Do you have things that we use social media? So is it empowering? Are we watching? Are we reading things from folks like scholars like Naeem Akbar and Baba Wade Nobles and Dr. Linda James Myers? Are we reading? Are we bringing in and taking in those things? Or are we always taking in something negative about political, who's doing what to who?
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that because, one of the things that I've been increasingly mindful about is not taking in so much negativity. The
Yeah.
reason that the news exists is to keep us in a fear-based reality. And so we focus on the things to get to positive and negative. We focus on the negative things and we don't focus on the positive things. I said at the top of the show that I spent almost 2 weeks in Mexico. And I told folks that I was going to Mexico and they were like, oh, the cartels, they're blowing up cars, and all this negativity. And it's like, well, that has nothing to do with me. And because those things have happened, it's not going to prevent me from experiencing the beauty of life.
Yeah.
So if I had listened to them and said, "Oh, well, I guess I must not be, I must not
Must
be,
not be mine.
must not be meant for me to go to Mexico." But what happened was I'm like, well, not that I'm delusional or, escapist or any way or in denial about things, but we live in a universe of abundance.
We do.
And so I got on the plane, I flew to Mexico. I enjoyed every moment of the experience. And even though there were some things that happened that challenged me, in terms of that peace that you talked about,
Yeah.
I
Challenge
made
is a challenge.
I made peace with the things that happened and then things worked out. Okay. So, and I also became cognizant of the power of thought and the power of creating the outcome and the reality that I wanted to see. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but while I was there, something that was very important to me got away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because of something that I did. I left something somewhere. And I had to make peace with the fact that it was gone. But I said to myself, this thing is important to me. And it's important enough for me to focus my attention on its return.
Mm-hmm.
And I got it back.
And you got it back.
And I got it back. And this thing was worth over $2,000. So it's not, it's not a small thing to part with. But it's like, I'm going to bed and I'm thinking, no, we need to get that back, and then it happened. But another thing that it did is it just made me personally aware of the power of the mind to affect certain outcomes. And I think sometimes we lose the thought that we have the ability to influence outcomes, and it's connected to our divinity, which is something else that we push away from. But when you understand your divinity, you understand that you have a certain level of control of things that happen to you. And I really like what you said about what happens when things happen to you and how you process that. Because you can look at it as a total negative when there was a lesson in it for you to learn. And that's the positive that came out of that situation, right?
Look for the lesson. And I'm sure at this point, even though you lost that thing, it was distressing for a moment, you've already calibrated a new way of keeping up with that thing so that you don't experience that again. So there was a lesson.
Yeah. And the lesson was that if you're afraid to lose it, you might want to just leave it at home.
Or cover it a little differently next time.
Yeah, cover it a
And
little
that's the
differently.
reason, but that's the reason why the program that I developed is called Harmony and Balance. And that title is based in my principles of harmony and balance. And I tell people all of the time in any type of workshop that I do is that's the goal. That's the chase that you want to be, to create all things working together, right? And to be able to try to balance things out. And so if there was a lot of distress, it needs to be a whole lot of coping positivity to balance that out, right? Losing something that important for whatever time frame it is. Okay, we got to balance out. What do we do? Folks explaining to you that there were dangers where you went, and you say, okay, I hear that. I'll take precaution for that, but I'm still going to go and enjoy myself and have a balance. And then when the barriers for those things came up, there was some adjustment that was made. All of that is balance. All of that is balance. We can't move around the world thinking that everything is going to happen in alignment every single day and every single moment. But when it gets, because we are divine, right? Because we have intrinsic self-worth, we can make the adjustment and make things line right back up ourselves. We have the ability to be able to realign. And if you tap into that more often than not, yes, the distress was there. Yes, the anxiety was there. You acknowledge those things, you felt those things, and then you recalibrated. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. And really, when things happen to us, and this is something that I have derived from the readings of Ra'un Nefer Amen, and that is that you have opportunities to test your ability to be at peace. Sometimes things happen to you just to give you the opportunity, because the dysfunction happens many times with the reaction. It's like I'll take it to the game of golf. When you play golf, and I know you've been out with your dad maybe a few times.
For sure.
when you play golf, we have to maintain a calm state of mind. So when something negative happens, that ball goes out of bounds, or goes into the sand trap, or goes into the water, whatever, and you just hit a bad shot, you can react to it in a way that completely destroys your peace. Or you can say, okay, I hit a bad shot. I just need to hit a good next shot. And so you celebrate the good next shot that you make because that good next shot might have rescued you from a bad score on that hole.
For
But
sure.
if you stay in that place of you know, it takes you away from your game. You know,
And you
so
might switch your club. You might change your club. My
yeah.
dad will do that often. He'll see
Mhm,
what I'm doing when we go play
mhm,
golf, right?
mhm.
He'll see the swing that I made from the place that we were. And if that wasn't the right calibration because I'm too heavy handed or that club, he'll switch my club.
Mhm.
And so that calibration is like, she hit the ball this hard. She got this much drive, this much follow through. Let me match it up with what's going on. And a lot of times, again, that's what we have to do in life. We see the shot, we took the shot, we didn't make the shot, so we have to readjust. We had to recalibrate. We might have to change up the club or the tool that we are using in that moment, and then we take that deep breath and you swing again.
Yeah. And the key is controlling your reaction.
For sure.
That's the real key, is controlling your reaction to something that happens, because sometimes that reaction is more injurious than the thing that actually happened.
That actually happened.
You
Yeah.
know, another thing, since we're talking about golf, and one of the reasons that I love the game so much is that it's a sport that requires a lot of imagination. And, you know, sometimes you think this is the shot that I want to hit, and then you hit the shot. And the feeling that you get when you think about it and then it happens,
Yeah.
you know, and you spend the entire game chasing the feeling of accomplishment. So people think golf is a boring game, and I used to think the same thing. But then when I embraced the game, I got so involved in it that I was playing 3 or 4 times a week. You know, now it's a little different because I don't have a whole lot of time to play golf, but
To
when I
play,
do,
yeah.
I enjoy it. So
I
you,
enjoy it as well, and I enjoy the aspect we were talking about earlier of nature.
mm-hmm,
Like when you go golfing where you are, and we get engulfed in the game, but I've had a couple of times recently, we always go for Father's Day, that I
mm-hmm,
just stopped for a second and took in the scenery and the environment. It's amazing to do, and I challenge folks to do it often because that's a reset for us as well, to take
yeah,
in as much nature as we can wherever we are. But being out golfing, 10 times out of 10, it's an amazing scenery to be in, and
yeah.
it's very peaceful.
I wholeheartedly agree. You know, back in the day when I was playing 4 times a week and I was going to all these different golf courses in Northeast Ohio, you know, the consistent thing is that you're out in nature, you know, and while
For
you're out
sure.
in nature, you know, I play Highland. I used to play Highland all the time. You know, you see deer out there, squirrels, rabbits, you know, you see the animals out there. And then you go through the season. So you're playing in the spring and you get to witness the beauty of spring, and
For
then in the
sure.
fall and the leaves are falling, and then in the summertime you're out there, it's 80 degrees and sunny and a 5 mile per hour breeze, and you think, wow, this is really it. But it, again, it's that opportunity to connect with nature.
For sure.
You mentioned your dual diagnosis program, Harmony and Balance. When I think of balance, I think of Ma'at, and you've made
Yes.
references to Ma'at, but for the folks
Yes.
out there who don't know what that is, could you share that with them?
My aunt is this Egyptian goddess that represents the day of Judgment Day, in a sense. And there is this scale, and your heart gets put on this scale, and we're balancing to see if your heart is as light as a feather. In order for your heart to be as light as a feather, you can't let distress take over. And so you have to bring that balance back. You have to continuously bring that balance back. And so on Judgment Day, there's going to be my aunt standing there with all of these feathers, right? She's a big, huge entity with all of these feathers coming down. And did you live your life lighthearted? Were you as light as a feather? And so I use my eye, the virtues of my eye, um, as guiding principles and my moral compass to try to live my life every day with balance, with integrity, with order, right? Just pulling yourself back to like the virtues of my eye. There's actually 42 principles there on um, the walls in Egypt, and that we can go back in the history. I know historically you can probably speak to this better than I can, but as we use these virtues daily, they are the way that I kind of like organize my life. I'm going to move, I'm going to use it as a moral compass. So we'll take integrity as an example. I'm going to move in integrity every day, whether you're watching or not, because that's my moral compass, right? Not because that's a rule here at your job, not because that is what you need to do in your recovery, because somebody's watching and going to give you a coin if you did not. I'm going to move with integrity every day because I'm responsible for me and for myself, right? Balance. I'm going to try to restore balance, which means when the barriers come, when the challenges come, my job is to try to restore and give myself back to get back to balance, right? Respect. Giving respect, receiving respect, knowing that if you give that out, it'll get wielded back to you, correcting it when it's not there, right? And so those aspects, again, are my moral compass for my life, but they are the guiding principles, or kind of like my group principles in my group therapy sessions. And
Mhm.
so my intention is for folks to start valuing these values and try to instill them in their life, and try to allow for them to help them with their mental health and their substance use or addiction.
Mhm. Well, you mentioned moral compass, and you made reference to the 42 declarations of freedom from sin.
Yeah.
And these 42 declarations of freedom from sin were things that people who had a mindset of operating in a divine modality accepted. So when you can go through your day and you can recite these 42 declarations of freedom from sin, and you can say, not have I done 42 things that would make me immoral, then you're existing in a
Yeah.
state of divinity.
All the
So
time.
yeah, so the 10 commandments were actually derived from the 42 confessions, but they flipped them, and they were saying, thou shalt not. Well, there's a difference between saying thou shalt not and saying I haven't. And when you say I haven't done these things, that's a confirmation that you're living a divine life. But if you say I won't, well, maybe you did that yesterday. I won't,
Yeah.
look at my neighbor's wife in a certain kind of, in a lustful
I'll
way.
try not.
You
I'll
know,
try not.
you know, so
For sure.
so in essence, what you are developing, or what you are encapsulating in this moral compass, is a code by which to live. So when judgment day comes and that feather is placed on the scale against the weight of your heart, the judgment is not from something outside of you that is looking down upon you. The judgment comes from your own
From
actualization,
within.
your own understanding of how you have been conducting your life. And you are the person who has the ability to make the decisions that allow you to go through those 42 confessions in a positive way on a daily basis. This is how we create a righteous reality for ourselves. And it's not something that's unattainable, but it's something that requires our energy, our focus, and our action. So,
Ashe. Like,
yeah. so,
yeah.
so what can you add to that, right?
And so
Um,
it let it be true.
yes. Are there any other types of therapy or any other modalities that you can talk about that you employ to get folks on the right side of mental health?
Relying on what you love. Please rely on what you love. Please go back to what brings peace to you and what brings calmness to you outside of everybody else. What you need to do to be fulfilling and pulling for you. Now, when we talk about what else exists out there in the world, DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, is huge. I think that it is a nice complement to OCT and BSA, which is optimal conceptual theory and then belief systems analysis. So that is like mindfulness, that is engaging your senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you taste? What can you touch? That is that deep breathing and finding meditations online that folks can just stop for a minute because we're so busy, right? That is narrative therapy, you telling your story. It is something extremely powerful about that person being able to tell their story without without judgment, without ruling. I want to tell you how things are impacting me. So we want to empower folks to always be able to tell their story, to live their truth, to talk about their lived experience and move through that through narrative therapy. I love drumming as therapy. Drumming, African dance is therapeutic. Um, Cognitive behavioral therapy is so common. However, it is evidence based, but I believe it's very controversial because aspects of it are irrational thoughts. Who's to say my thoughts are irrational or irrational? In that room, the therapist makes the decision on whether my thoughts are rational or irrational. So if there are two different sets of worldviews in the room, who who has the power to say what's rational or irrational? Potentially that therapist. And so that can potentially be harmful for a person who has a different worldview. And that person may what? Terminate and not come back. Right. And so there are aspects of like retraining the mind that are extremely important and calibrating or resetting, all of these things, the negative connotations of all of these things are happening to me or all of these things are negative. We live in the eras, Willie Lynch is still very, very much rampant. So there is a pin against each other or a conflict, men against women, and this religion is better than that religion. That competition, that suboptimal aspect is there all of the time. Which one is gooder, better, more this, more that? But a lot of times it takes you connecting to self and saying what's important to me. What are you reading? Bibliotherapy means what are you reading? Are we reading things from scholarly Black folks? Um, Brother Antonio mentioned this earlier. Like the things are out there, not Google. Those not Google. If you're getting all your information from Google, you're gonna be wrong, right? Unless you're Googling books by Black authors and Black scholars, right? Seeking out information from the plethora of Black authors, Black writers, Black historians. Oh my goodness. Please tap in with a Black historian. Please, please, please tap in with a Black historian so that you can get the truth from us. We got to go back to FUBU, for us by us. We have to go back to that if we want to seek that. But once we seek truth for ourselves, we seek culture, we seek really what the story is from our historian's perspective. There's a level, I think, of pride and uh just like happiness that we can get when folks know about Kwanzaa and know what that represents and know that we have a set of values connected to Black people. It's like, oh, I didn't even know we had a set of values connected to us. Yeah, because we're so indoctrinated and everybody else is.
Mhm.
So I believe that therapy is strongly connected in one, building peace, building balance, having the time to step away from the crowded, busy day and just having a little bit of quiet time. When you get quiet, you can think a lot more clear. So you need that. You need to move your body. Exercise is therapeutic. Moving your body is therapeutic. Nature is our doctor. Water, sunlight, being outside, those types of things. And again, I'm always going to go back to optimal conceptual theory and belief systems analysis, understanding that knowledge of self is important. What are your triggers? How do you know when you're angry? What does your body do when you get angry? Right? Knowing yourself. Can you list out the numbers of the alphabet, the letters in the alphabet, and come up with a word that describes yourself from each one of those words in the alphabet. Not anything that anybody else told you you were. We told you in school you were talkative, but how do you see yourself? Not from somebody else's perspective, but from your own perspective. A lot of times our mental distress comes from a self-fulfilling prophecy of somebody telling us that we are something. And so we don't think that we can be anything but that. And so we have to get back to the divine divinity of who we are. And you have to understand your purpose. And if you don't know what your purpose is, you sit back, you close your eyes, and you think, if I was doing something that I loved every day, all day, money wasn't an object, taking care of myself wasn't an object, what would I be doing? That's connected to your purpose. That's how you start the journey of figuring out where your purpose is. And the ones of us who are the most happy are the ones who have figured out how to intertwine our purpose with how we take care of ourselves, how we make money for a living. Those are the folks who are genuinely the happiest.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, Erica, because that's something that I talk about in terms of being of ultimate importance for all of us, is to figure out why we are here. Who are you? Why are you here? What is your purpose? And when you discover what that purpose is and you assign yourself to it, then money is not an object, because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I think the universe is going to find a way to facilitate your mission.
The
And
divine is going to make it happen.
there
And you're going to
it
live
is.
in abundance
There it is.
because
There
of
it is.
it.
You
Yeah.
mentioned something a few moments ago that created a thought in my mind, and that is the impact of the cultural biases of the therapist. For instance, if you have a therapist whose worldview is completely and totally based in Christianity, and again, I'm not knocking Christianity, folks. I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying, if they see things a certain way, if you're immersed in a Christian perspective, and you have somebody who perhaps might have an African spiritual paradigm that they're connected with, and because there's disparity between the two, could there be a detrimental impact on that person who's receiving therapy from someone who has a religious or cultural bias?
For sure. Cultural bias is huge. And if you are a therapist, you have to be willing to check your own biases before you start in. And one of the reasons why optimal conceptual theory is so powerful is because that is one of the first steps that a person has to ask themselves. What do you already know about this community and how they appear? What do you know about the fathers in this community? What do you know about the violence in this community? What do you know that this person is facing without even knowing them at all? Do you have any own personal biases against that? Do you have anything that will come up that might be triggering for yourself in dealing with what this client is working with? And then another key aspect again is spiritual development, right? So, what does that client do or know or have spiritually that could help therapeutically? So, if you have a bias that is going to show up in the room, that is let's say, a religious bias, 9 times out of 10, if that client doesn't allow like that, you're going to create some type of strain. And then that strain is going to turn into that client not feeling heard, not feeling seen, right? If I walk into a Christian setting and I have stones on my hand, and you have some type of bias about that, it's probably not going to go well for me, and I might not feel heard. But if you are a therapist that has your own set of views, but your intention is showing up to the room, understanding your client's set of views, and teaching your client how to use their set of views, their worldview, and their spiritual aspects, then you teach them how to use their spiritual foundation to help in their life. And so I can then go to any type of therapist because they're going to use the fact that I love my eye and I love studying Ifa, and they're going to encourage me to keep reading those things. But the disconnect is going to happen if I am Christian and I decide that that is the only value or moral compass that is allowed in the room. Then we're going to have a conflict. And that bias could be religion, it could be gender, it could be race, it could be age, it could be ability, disability. We got to look at all of the intersecting identities of that particular person and see what their experience is related to all of them. But yeah, if your biases are not checked and they show up in the room, it's going to create a strain in the therapeutic process.
Yeah.
For
Well,
sure.
so many of the things that can provide help to folks in some ways are pushed back upon. For instance, there are some folks in the church who think that there's something evil about yoga.
Yes.
And it's like, well, no, yoga is about your breath. And your
Yeah.
breath is the most important thing to you, because without your breath, you don't have life. Now, those who practice yoga understand the power of the breath and the healing properties of the breath. There are yogis who practice certain types of breathing that allow them to extend their lives for several years. So if you
Sure.
have a closed mind to that, then you don't get the benefit of what those things could do for you. So sometimes you have to take your biases and set them to the side, just so that there can be a certain modicum of success, involved in a situation, because you were open-minded,
It's
so
not. Your indoctrination is showing.
there it is.
Your conditioning is showing, right? That these things can't be helpful or useful or whatnot. Like that was some type of belief that somebody told you that you had to stay away from. And it limits you and it limits your worldview. It could be your perspective. And I can understand your perspective and disagree with your perspective, because yoga is fantastic for me, and it has its roots in whatever it has its roots in, but I'm utilizing it as, like you said, medicine for my body at this point.
Well, having been to Egypt, known to those of us who are aware as Kemet, being in those structures over there in Beni Hassan, and seeing the images of Africans practicing yoga and martial
My
arts,
goodness. Yes.
this again goes back thousands of years, and they knew then what it could do for you. But the issue is that in 2026, we don't know.
And you got to know the history of these things first. You
Yes.
have to know the history of these things. So when that bias comes up, it's like, do you understand the history?
Mm.
And or at this point, do we understand that it's coming from Kemet?
Right.
And so it's part of your heritage, right? To be able to take it on and use it. And so when we know that, then we can embrace it a lot more.
Okay. I just want to touch on a couple more things. I know you probably
Yep.
have things to do,
I'm
but
okay. I'm good.
one, okay, good. Um, it seems like right now, and we talked about the racial battle fatigue. I think we're also in a place where we're suffering from grief fatigue. And
Yes, we are.
I think it's a result of, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and forgive me for being in this rabbit hole, but I think it's a result of the pandemic, things that happened during that, and then in the aftermath of it, we're looking around and we're seeing our friends and our loved ones. It seems, and this is purely anecdotal on my part. I don't have any I don't have any research to document what I'm saying, but it just seems as though we're experiencing more loss when it comes to loved ones, friends, and acquaintances. And I'm in a stage now where I'm approaching that final chapter for some. I'm not projecting a short life. I mean, I'm doing everything I can, and probably could do more. But how do we deal with this grief that we're experiencing now, because so many people are affected by grief. And I have friends that I've had conversations with, and it's obvious to me that, they're still dealing with the grief of loss, over a period of years. It's like, 3 or 4 years that the person has transitioned, and they're still in that state, and everybody has a different time frame in terms of how they recover from it or get over it, so to speak. But what can we do to release ourselves from the grief that's caused by so much loss of life?
Yeah, so shout out to any scholar who made publications about the pandemic and COVID and its impact on our psychological functioning, because there is some research out there now, and I know that it's growing. And there was a huge psychological impact on all of us from that, right? There were so many things that we had to isolate ourselves from, B, see the numbers and the stats about what this loss, right? And then have it happen in your backyard, in your home, to your loved ones. And whether you had loved ones pass at that point, or the magnitude, like you said, of death in that area, led you to kind of like get in that grief cycle about what you've lost, right? So grief in itself is heavy, it's intense, and it doesn't have a timeline to it. I think that that is part of the issue, where we think that it's gonna go away. It gets easier to deal with because we find places to put it. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about honoring folks who've made their transition, and different ways that you can do that within like your home, as far as having plants and having altars, or having, we again, all of that is back culturally. How many grandparents do we have? We had an altar, when people say they don't want an altar, but your grandparents had this wall of all of these pictures, and of folks who have made their transition, and things from folks that we family that we had and we lost in the military. We do it very naturally, having some type of visual representation when folks can get comfortable of having that person's picture, having artifacts from them, to keep grounded, keep their spirits alive, but also knowing that it's okay, that if you have those kind of like emotional reactions, especially like anniversaries or birth dates or death dates, give yourself that time for a second to be able to feel, to be able to go back, to be able to tell the stories, to reconnect, to hold space for it. And I believe that that then has the power to be able to help you tolerate and continue days or weeks or years past that. But the horrible thing that we do is we suppress. We can't think about it. We shouldn't think about it. We don't think about it. So you push all of that down. And then what happens with pressure? You push it down, you don't address it, you don't talk about it, you don't do anything about it. And then in the worst case scenario, those things explode, right? And so when they explode or the outburst happens, it's usually something that we deem socially unacceptable, or you're choppy at someone, or don't bring that person's name up, or we're not supposed to talk about that, or we don't want to talk about that, or why does that even upset you? So I think that grief and loss and losing people in this realm, even if we've lost them in this realm, if we keep honoring them and talking about them and having special things, the goal is to keep them alive in spirit. And that's the goal. And there are going to be days and weeks. There's a lot of like holidays, special events, when people kind of move into that holiday season that people tend to highlight around February, around November, December, January, that time frame. We start reminiscing on who's not here, on what that person brought to the table. This person always brought the family together. This person always cooked. And so that is what brought the family together. They hosted things. And so we get that seasonal depression. There's an aspect of we start thinking about who we lost and who's not going to be. And so that's why grief kind of circles back around so often, is because there's reminders throughout the year in significant time frames where we look around and we've slowed down, our day is slowed down, and we go, that person's not here to enjoy this or enjoy that, or for me to rely on because they were my sounding board. And so we get a lot of reminders. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, what would they do? What would they say? What's the first thing that that person would say to you? And replay those things. So keeping that spirit alive is definitely something that we have to do, because that loss that we experienced during COVID and just all around is huge. But it's that like circle of life thing that we're gonna come, we're gonna enjoy, we're gonna be here for a good time and not a long time. And then we all beg, go back to the spiritual realm and beg and hope that we can do it again, right? So yeah.
But you know what though? What you're describing is a situation in some cases where when you bring up that person, they become present. You know,
Yes, they do.
You know, we always look at it in a sense of loss, but one adjustment that I've made is just understanding the eternal aspect of the soul. You can't destroy it.
Yeah.
It's forever, you know. So my father transitioned back in 2013, and I had a certain level of awareness about the significance of ancestry and, you know, them going to a different realm and them being in a position to assist us in their new state and all of that, you know, and I fully conscious and aware of it, you know. But I'm driving down MLK and I'm thinking about my dad, and the tears are streaming down my face, right? Because in that moment, I'm sensing a certain sense of loss, right? But, you know, as I live my life now, it's like, wow, you know, Dad is with me. You know, he's here. I keep thinking about him. I look in the mirror, I see his face.
For
you
sure.
know, because I watched him over a period of decades, you know, Dad. And so now my perspective is my father continues to live because he lives through me. So when I'm playing the piano, you know, I'm doing a show or something, and Dad is with me, and I'm thinking about him because I knew that it was something that he liked to do, but he didn't really have time to do it. He couldn't dedicate it himself to it the way I have, you know. So it's like he's not gone, he's here, you know, and I can continue to celebrate and give his name. You know, at Karamu a couple weeks ago, we had an ancestral remembrance gala. And so I wrote a poem about my dad, and the poem is online. I can include a link in the description for this video for anyone who wants to see it. But the whole idea was to remember my father, and I remembered my father, not just the good, because there were some things that happened in my life that, you know, when Dad put that belt on me behind, I wasn't feeling good about that. But I knew that it was his way of showing me that I needed to make different choices in terms of my behavior, but those choices were limited by his understanding. Case in point, we're living in Savannah, Georgia, riding down the highway, 2-lane highway, and I'm like 6, 7 years old, and I don't know what possessed me, but I took my hat off and I threw it out the window and I watched it fly. And for me, it was just seeing that hat fly. It wasn't me thinking about Dad worked so many hours and made the money and bought that hat, and it was for whatever reason it was for. It was just me being a child and the wonder of seeing that hat fly out the window.
Yeah, for sure.
I got, you know, I got justice, You know, I felt the belt. You know,
Like,
you can't
hey, you
be
still had to
throwing.
try. You had to try though.
Yeah. But you know, I also know that, you know, whether he had a full understanding of the mentality of a young person to do something like that, I look back at it and it was an opportunity for him to learn as well as me.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know, what I learned was you ain't gonna throw your hat out the window again. You know,
That's not how this is set up.
that's not how this is set up. But the point is that it's just important for us to remember, and when we invoke those who came before us, they continue to exist, and that's why we have to continue to speak their names. We have to do the libations. We have to acknowledge them with the altars and the things, because they are a part of our history.
And the tears is okay.
Yeah.
The emotions are okay. Sometimes
Right.
we think we can't. Am I supposed to be crying at this stage? They've
Yeah.
been gone this long. Yes. Like,
Yeah.
I think my big drive is whatever emotions come along with it, they're valid. They're your emotions. And that could be frustration, that could be mad, that could be sad, that could be tears of joy, whatever. And the African proverb said, "A soul is not gone until there's no one left to call their name."
There
So
you go.
you like you said, you keep reeling that soul back, and hey, stay around, and I acknowledge that, I know that you're here. Yeah, we
Yeah.
we we keep them around by speaking their name and telling their stories. We tell funny stories about my grandfather all the time because
Mm.
that keeps him in spirit. We talk about the connectedness of cooking with my grandmother all of the time because it keeps her here in spirit. So I think that those are things that we gotta remember and do, and they might bring a tear, and the tear is okay.
Yeah.
And the laughter after of it is okay, and the smiles about it. And you may even readjust and go, you know what? I'm gonna find another hat just for him. Or I might, every time I go out of town, I might throw a hat. Just in his honor.
Well, you know, the difference between then and now is that now I pay for the hat. He didn't pay for it.
Yeah, now you pay for the hat. Now you make the decision for you.
And I want to embellish what you just mentioned, because you know there have been times in life where I have been somewhere and I've just felt a certain level of emotion. I felt like I was on the verge of tears. And when those things happen, it's like that's dad showing up. That's
Yeah.
me connected to him, because I'm thinking about him in such intensity that it causes me to have an emotional reaction in that
Reaction.
moment. So, you know, when I started to read that poem about my dad on the stage at Karamu, I almost broke down.
Yeah. You
Like, oh,
almost
hold
broke.
it,
Oh,
hold it
you're trying
together,
to
bro.
hold
Hold it together. And
it
I got through it. There's so much that that we could have discussed today, and I'm sure that we will have other opportunities to talk about some things, because it's important to me to give people tools that will equip them for success in life. And I think, you know, the whole idea of managing your mental health is very important. And I like the holistic approach to it. You know, what I know about you is that not only are you involved in the mental health part of it, but you know, we made reference to a plant-based diet, and we can talk about, you know, in a future episode, we can talk about the connection between our diet as Africans and the emotional issues and the dysfunction that we experience as a result of that. Because the truth is that our environment, our food, those things are taking a toll on our mental state, because there's a connection between the chemicals in your brain physiology. And so, for instance, if you're eating Doritos, you're eating something that has an excitotoxin that affects your brain function, and it affects your thinking. You know, so if you wonder why children might be anxious or stressed, or you know, all the things that they experience in the classroom, a lot of times it's because of what they had for breakfast or what they didn't have for breakfast. You know,
Absolutely.
so the holistic
Absolutely.
approach is really the most appropriate way to deal with individuals, because you're dealing with all of them and not just parts of them, because everything is connected. So I want to thank you for joining me today. You know, we scheduled this like maybe a month ago.
Yes.
And I know I was trying to get you on last year, but you were going through a move and everything, and things were kind of hectic. So, you know, everything kind of fell into place. And here we are towards the end of the Mercury retrograde, but we still accomplished our objective. So thank you so much. Give your dad a hug for me next time you see him, because I know you'll probably see him before I do. But,
sure will.
He's one of my dearest friends in life. You know, I love your father like a brother, and I am honored to be your uncle as a result of that relationship.
It's been an honor to have you as well. It's been pretty cool, actually. It's been pretty cool. You're pretty cool, uncle. Yeah. So
well, I'm remembering a party that you had a few years back. I think you were celebrating something at that time. I think it was kind of a combination birthday party and combination graduation party.
Graduation party and birthday party. We kind of did it all in one. I hit 40 in my internship in California. And so, you know, milestone birthday, right? Like, yeah, born day, we got to celebrate that we made it there. We got all of these accomplishments happening all at the same time. So it was 41 at that point. And graduation was like right there, right at the corner. I hit a couple barriers and thought it was going to happen by the time. But that I had a blast.
Yeah.
And celebrating was it's so necessary. Like all of the milestones that we have to celebrate all of the time. And these accomplishments, and my PhD was for my community at large. Like this was so that we have more people of African ancestry doing more research about what it is important for psychological liberation for the African mind, body, and spirit. Like that is so important. We have some giants and a lot of scholars who have already laid a foundation and done an immense amount of work. I just want to keep it going. I just want to keep it going. And that party represented celebrating returning home.
Okay. Well, I will say this, and we mentioned some of the giants, Dr. Akbar and Asa Hilliard and the others, but all I'm saying right now is now the baton is in Dr. Erica Lynn Graham. And at some point, you'll be passing the baton to someone else, and we'll keep things moving forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
And April 4th, your father is going to be at Larchmere Arts to help me celebrate my birthday. It's not a milestone yet. Next year, it's going to be that milestone, but it's going to be like a preemptive celebration. So folks will be able to come in and have a good time. We're going to play some music. And your father, I think, is going to play his bongos.
Nice.
Yeah, so folks are invited to that. But as always, to those of you who have been with us, 18 folks that are on with us right now, we really appreciate you checking us out. If it's not too much of a bother, if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and get notifications on when we bring you new content, because we're having interesting folks like Dr. Graham on our show. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, and make today your absolute best day, everyone. Peace.
Peace.